This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
Yesterday, two Muslim cousins took knives and butcher cleavers and a gun and went into a mosque in Jerusalem and hacked 4 people apart, and then were shot by police when they arrived. I'm so thankful for the Michael Savage show and the presentation today after the killing of those 4 Jews in the synagogue. Michael Savage then discussed religion and God and showed common ignorance and confusion of terms that I would like to address here. I will give the show and the background of the news before the details of discussing God and religion.
Images of blood trails in the Jerusalem synagogue emerged on Tuesday after 2 Palestinians armed with a meat cleaver and a gun killed 4 people before being shot dead by police. A worshipper who attended the morning service in the Kehilat Bnei Torah synagogue in an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of West Jerusalem said about 25 people were praying when shooting broke out. Pictures posted by an Israeli army spokesman on the internet showed a man in a Jewish prayer shawl lying dead, a bloodied butcher's cleaver discarded on the floor and several overturned prayer tables. Israel's ambulance service said at least 8 people were seriously wounded.
About the Muslim murderers, it grieves me that they were praised by Hamas as martyrs and initially praised by the Palestinian Authority. On the streets in East Jerusalem, they were handing out candy and celebrating. I listened to Michael Savage afterwards, and I was so glad, because so few people care or even want to know what's going on. And he is aware and cares. And the degradation of what I knew as American culture is something he's aware of also and is grieved over. But so the fellowship in that caring I value very much. But then he had some religious things, which I will show, callers calling in, and he talked about God, and he showed confusion and ignorance that is common, and I would like to help him and anybody get a little more clarity on this, because it's very common, this ignorance of terms and confusion of meaning.
Hello, Likei Yamin, Venomare, Amen.
That is the Jewish prayer for the dead, which we are playing for the world to hear, for 4 innocent Jewish souls who were mercilessly slaughtered this morning by the Palestinian friends of the American left, butchered in their synagogue, in their house of prayer, as they were simply praying to God for the morning prayers. Thank you for all of your hard work on the left, because you've given the world such spiritual beauty.
Michael gives the wrong impression here. The left is not for Islamo-fascists. It is against the white Anglo-Saxon and Jewish male head of household culture. They are anarchists. They want the freedom to engage in sex, homosexuality, abortion, whatever. The left wants liberation from culture.
Jesus said that in the last days it would be like the days of Noah, a world filled with violence and apostasy. Is this not what Christians are seeing? We had a Jewish caller in the last hour who said that according to the Orthodox Jewish view, the world is in its last days. And there are Christians who believe that with Israel regathered the second time in fulfillment of Old and New Testament prophecy, surrounded by Muslim enemies that want to wipe her off the map, well, they see the same thing. They see the same thing. And so religious people see the world differently than the rest of us. I am not a religious person myself, and I feel that I don't have an obligation to define myself in that regard. I think each person has to find their own way through earth. But I respect those who are very religious. It doesn't mean that I agree with them or that I follow their way.
Michael, speaking positive of religion here is inappropriate too, because you include Islam and Hinduism. And the Dalits are murdered if they try to change their status, and so are in Hinduism, and so are the Demis in Islam. So these are cults that oppress people and kill them if they don't accept the oppression, that make a difference between the Christianity and cults that oppress people. I want to add here that even in Christianity, if you indoctrinate a child in a belief system, memorizing a belief system before the age of reason, you've violated that child and turned them into a robot that they will never have common sense and intuition. They will either accept the belief system that they're indoctrinated in or rebel against it. That's what created communism, was a bunch of mainly Jewish rebelling against their indoctrination, and they didn't have the common sense to understand they were destroying the home. Let's get on with it. I interrupt here with a simple postulate that is generally accepted. That is that matter is not created or destroyed. It is eternal. And that space is not created or destroyed. It is eternal. And that energy, the motion, is not created or destroyed. It's eternal. And that creation is not poof magic, something out of nothing, whether it's biblical creation or Big Bang theory, poof, 10 billion years ago, all of a sudden magic. No, the process of physics is a constant fluctuation between forming and exploding. And the creation is like making something out of cloth, not magic making something. It's forming something out of eternal matter. Now, like is written in the Christian Bible, Paul said about God. God, that's our God, the unknown God. In him we live and move and have our being. We're made out of this eternal dirt. I call God. God is everything. We are part of God. We are intelligence in God. We might be transient and dying, but we are intelligence in the eternity of what exists.
I have, in my own way, found other ways to survive.
Michael doesn't create a magic God sitting on a cloud somewhere to rescue him.
What I see on the board is fascinating about God.
Let me tell you the way I see it. As I'm listening about you, I've heard you saying that you believe in God. So the way I see it is, you believe in him only when it makes sense to you. The second that it doesn't make sense to you, you start questioning it. So the way I see it is, as soon as I believe that there's a God and he created the world.
This is where the anthropomorphic ignorance comes in. That is the human projection. People create gods in their mind, maybe make them out of stones or make some object a god to serve their purposes. They create the god. So when they think of a god and creating, that's just the same type of process going on that went on in their mind. In fact, God is not created or destroyed. God is everything, eternal, and we're made out of his dirt.
I have to admit that I can't understand what he's doing, because if I would be understanding everything, then I would be the creator. Obviously, if he is God, and I'm not, and he created such a powerful world and such an interesting world, obviously there's things about him that I can't understand.
No, I agree with you. Whatever the creator may be, the creator is beyond us, beyond our understanding. I agree with that totally.
I have to laugh at this common ignorance. God is everything eternal, physical reality. And yes, it has been a long process as we discover the laws of physical reality. But like Jesus said, it's better I go away. I will send the Spirit of truth that will teach you all things. The Spirit of truth is our ability to investigate reality. When my grandmother was born, they didn't have electricity. They didn't have cars. They didn't have paved roads. And they only had water in the house if they lived downhill from a stream or had a windmill to pump it out of a well. And one of the biggest problems at Christmas time was houses burning down because they didn't have electricity. They used candles on the tree. At any rate, we've come a long ways. We're learning more and more of God's laws. In God, we live and move and have our being. All we have to do is explore our curiosity and be healthy enough to do that without projecting nonsense into it.
So why should I ask question when there's happening something that I don't understand? Obviously.
Wait, hold on. Let me follow you, because what you're saying makes sense to me, because I've arrived at the same truth myself, which is that we cannot understand all the ways of God, or else we would be God. And man has a limited brain. As great as we think our brain may be, it's quite limited.
It's like Ecclesiastes 9:2 says,
"It is the same for all, since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice. As the good one is, so is the sinner, and he who swears is as he who shuns an oath."
So we see that the laws of God are just the laws of reality. It isn't some intelligent being sitting on a cloud throwing rocks on bad people. The same physical laws exist throughout reality, and they are eternal and unchanging. We are intelligence in this reality, and we can learn these laws and do good or bad with our knowledge of them. As I tell my 5-year-old granddaughter, she asks, "What are God's laws?" I say, one of them is don't jump off the 5-story building. God's laws will kill you.
It's a speck of sand in a sea of sand.
Therefore, even though, let's say, there was the Holocaust, and I have a lot of family that's killed there, I don't question it because he's so powerful that I don't question. I can't understand him, and I'm not trying to. I just go with the flow. The way he does it, that's the way it is, and that's the best. I'm not trying to question it, because if I question it and I think I have to understand everything, then I would be the God. And obviously I'm not, so I'm not questioning it.
This is absurd. Why not wake up and understand Islamofascists so that the Holocaust doesn't happen again? It's pretty simple, the foundation of God's laws here. That is, what makes babies is what made the genetics that exists. Look at the genetic behavior. The alpha male, who was the one who beat up the other boys and raped the females. And look at the female behavior, the one that manipulates. Look at me and look at me, and got the attention running around naked. That's the one that had the babies. Wake up and look at the reality. By their fruits you shall know them. And one of the fruits that they have to have in order to make a future is to have babies. So wake up. You can learn a lot of things about reality.
Well, you're saying things that for me are very difficult to live with, because in talk radio, we have to question everything, or else we're really not doing our job for the audience. This requires getting up at 5 in the morning and just every day, all day long, reading hundreds of pages of information in order to sort and sift and come up with words that have meaning for the listener, sometimes humorous, sometimes poignant, sometimes ridiculous. But you have to make sense, or the people wouldn't listen to the show. So therefore, many of us who do this, and I have to admit myself included, consider our intelligences greater than they are. And we try to understand things perhaps that we can't understand, and we make statements that don't make sense to some. But some of our statements do make sense, don't they? And some of the things we do are worth doing, but we have to keep trying, don't we?
Yes, and I just want to say thanks.
And I want to say thanks also, Michael, because we live in a world where more and more people are raised by babysitters and daycare and given a rubber nipple to suck instead of a mother's breast. They are uncaring, narcissistic, sociopathic, like the Renaissance aristocrats. As soon as the women got the power and the money, they hired somebody to take care of their babies, and their children were raised without a mammalian nursing bond and unable to care for their own children. And it's very hard to find someone that cares like you do, Michael, and I'm not alone. I can turn you on at night and hear your pain in empathy with my pain. Thank you very much for all that you do, because it is the ability to care that brings meaning to my life. Look at this little bit of caring on the animal level.
Something moved in the dead baboon's fur. A day-old newborn. It took a moment for Lachadima to notice. She's always been curious. But instead of a swift bite to the neck, Lachadima stopped, then lay down with the baboon. She didn't know how to react. Hyenas would normally send her scurrying for the trees, but this time, she gently lifted the baby to safety first. Only then did she return to confront the hyena. It was an aggressive defense, protecting the baby, not defending her kill. Lachadima's eyes never left the baby for hours, and strangely, this newborn started following her everywhere, reaching out to her, most likely imprinting on his new surrogate mother. Perhaps something more maternal and compassionate started to grow within her at that moment.
On the mammalian level, that maternal mammalian nursing bond. What a blessing it is, and look at the mockery that our society has made of it, and the mockery they've made of men being respected. Note, the mother doesn't care for the children to nurse them to sleep by breastfeeding them.
The arithmetic is simple. 1 and 1 makes 2, you see. Our lives are filled with love and joy, my Holly.
Note how you're supposed to have sympathy for this poor woman because her babies are crying.
Rock-a-bye, baby. Our family is rock solid.
Note where the men are supposed to take over, where the mammalian breastfeeding has failed.
And as always, that's the key. Our love will just...
Note the father image projected as a foolish, angry goof.
Keep growing strong, my Holly. Rock-a-bye, baby. My Holly rock, my Holly rock, my Holly rock-a-bye, baby. My...
Look at the vibrant, competent female and the goofy male supposed to be giving maternal care to the baby and incompetent at it.
Holly rock, my Holly rock, my Holly rock-a-bye child. holly rock, my holly rock, my holly rockabye, baby. Our lives are filled with love and joy, my holly rockabye, baby. Our holly rockabye, baby.
That was the world of the 1980s and 1990s. Today, they don't need a man. They've got welfare or they've got work and daycare. I taught school and had the 16-year-olds after school detention. They had to get home to their babies. They were given apartments and welfare because they got pregnant and had a baby. I taught in a suburban high school. These girls were a product of the Johnson social welfare system that took the black fathers out of the home. The women could throw them out and get welfare, have babies without a father and get more money, and so could their children. Then they moved them into the suburbs for integration. So these were black girls in the suburbs in the subsidized apartments that they had built for them. I need to add here, a lot of their conversation was about the parties and sex that they had after they had picked their babies up from the daycare and gone home for the evening. Most of them today kill the baby before it's born. But that's the world we're living in. But I thank you so much for your care for Borders, Language, and Culture.